Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It's me, your favorite professional nerd, Jagger May. With me, as always, is our Dynasty captain, Jeff Bell. And then we have our usual Dynasty Risers and Fallers. But to mix things up, mainly for me and Jeff, Jeff, you've written an article. You gave me some people. I wrote them down, and we're going to talk about them. Let's call this Jeff special here. We got our first player, Xavier Worthy, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver. He had a decent game. I actually have not reviewed that game yet. Um, I haven't. I just saw that he had like box score numbers and sleeper said stuff happened. So, where are you at? Do you think that like, this is the time? Is this the breakout, or do you think this was just happen chance?
Well, the cynical part of me says that they were just waiting for this Bills game to kind of break him out to say, "Here you go, Buffalo. Like this is the guy you gave us. We've been keeping him under ice." But no, he looked better. I think that we've seen in the past couple weeks, there have been a couple deep shots where it was just a little bit out of bounds, just kind of misconnecting on some of those things. That was better this week. It seemed like they were more on the same page. I think it was interesting, really seeing Buffalo's defense attacked Kansas City a lot differently than what we have seen in the past, because in the past it's felt like they're willing to sit back and try to play zone, or they don't want to get burnt by a deep shot from Patrick Mahomes. This time they manned up on Travis Kelce and on DeAndre Hopkins. They brought pressure on Mahomes. They got to Mahomes quite a bit. And I think in those types of situations, that's where you're kind of going to need Xavier Worthy to be able to click and to take some stuff off the top of this the defense. And so he had the touchdown. He had some rushing game usage. He had 5 targets. That was the most targets he's had since, he had 8 targets in a couple back-to-back weeks last month. But it's just one that he's starting to put the pieces together a little bit. And there's been a lot. People have written him off. And I think the talent is still there. He's still explosive. He still looks like he shot out of a cannon when he touches the ball.
Yeah. I know I wouldn't say written him off, but I've got the parchment out. If that if that makes sense, like I'm wondering what he is. I know that specifically the data bros really liked him because of the production profile and the measurables, and I understand that. But I definitely think that he's a high end specialist, and everyone wants to keep saying Tyreek Hill, but people forget that Tyreek Hill's built like a bowling ball sometimes, so he plays a
Tyreek
lot
Hill's a college
stronger.
running back.
Yeah,
He was a running
exactly.
back in college.
Yeah, and I think that's often underrated because he just plays much bigger than what his stature may say, and then we're quick to put that label on Xavier Worthy, and it just doesn't work like that. And if you're able to properly cover him, you can. But a lot of times teams that they might have let's say if I'm Sean McDermott, what's been working for him, DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. So what that leaves your coverage a little closer to the line of scrimmage, and that leaves Xavier Worthy open. And I don't think that that's always going to be there. And that's what my worry's at. So it's not that I'm saying he sucks, but also don't, I think expectations were too high to begin with at the beginning of the season. So I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
the fuddy dud here.
Expectations were absolutely too high at the beginning of the season. You saw he was going in redraft leagues. I know underdog
Mhm.
isn't really fair to kind of categorize that, but he was going in like 5th or 6th round in underdog drafts. That's incredibly aggressive given his profile. We saw during rookie drafts there was a clear separation. A lot of people were comfortably putting him ahead Brian Thomas Jr. That never should have been the case, and it's
Never.
just one that you get these big reactions because everybody steams the guy up the board, and then he doesn't do exactly what you expect him to do, and everybody fades him back down the board. And so, let me buy in when people start to fade a player.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to finish. Just like, yeah, I kind of said poo poo a little bit on Worthy because he's not the next Tyreek Hill, but this is a good buy opportunity because I do think he's much better than the Miko Hardmans. He's much better than Kadarius Toney. I do think he's better than that. And you see what MVS is doing. That's the floor for Worthy. If you see like what type of player that MVS is now, and how he's still useful for someone like the Saints, now you have Worthy here and now here's where you could say, well, he's with Patrick Mahomes because now he's at Patrick Mahomes and has all these other stuff price, not the I know he's Tyreek Hill price we had him on in redraft season. And again, I know you guys get mad and say, well, you got to buy and sell and yada yada yada, but that's the game, folks. This is Dynasty. Go play redraft if you don't want to buy and sell like this. Anything else before we move on?
Nope, I'm good there.
All right, guys, go get Worthy while you can. You are buying a little bit high, but it's probably okay. Before we move any further, we need to pay some bills. Hit that like and subscribe button. We have the trade show. I pulled all your stuff from YouTube. So if you guys had comments, most of them will be in the trade show on Thursday, or at least the good ones. If you're playing if you're trading like fourth round pieces and stuff like that, I ignored you. You know who you are, and I'm sorry. We're not that desperate yet. But I want to do more for our listeners on the audio only. So if you are on Apple or Spotify, give us your trades and you will be my priority. Go over there. Moreover, guys, go to footballguys.com. We have the sale. It started. I told you guys about it last week. 20% off everything for Black Friday. That should go close to December. And moreover, we have cool stuff. We're selling merch. We have the stuff they only give me and Jeff and Alfredo, like this jacket that is real and it actually looks good. It's not Timu where you get it and it's made out of that weird smelly material that doesn't breathe well. I have like several shirts like that. I'm not judging it. We all got to do it sometimes, but this is good stuff that is on sale as well in our merch shop. So go to footballguys.com/plans, sign up and get some cool stuff. And for that, I'm going to take my glasses off because I look like an anime villain with all that glare. And we're going to talk about another hyper athletic player, this time over on the Packers. It was Christian Watson Day. So, Jeff, I know you've been significantly higher on Christian Watson than I have. So I'm going to assume that you believe he's a buy. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think he's a buy. I'm going to pull up his dynasty profile here on Keep Trade Cut because I'm curious where he's really valued. And wide receiver 53. I mean, wide receiver 53, geez. You get a 25-year-old that was a top, let's see, a year ago, he was valued, wide receiver 25? 25, December 7th, 2023, wide receiver 25. Wide receiver
He was a
53.
top 50 player, and he's drafted top 50.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And this is, I think, what we've come to realize with this Packers offense is you're going to get involvement from really 4 wide receivers. You're going to get even 5 wide receivers. You're going to get Tucker Kraft in there, Luke Musgrave when he's healthy. So you want a player like Watson because he does have the ability to break big plays, and that gets that startability. I think that we both like Romeo Doubs in the ideal concept of what he brings to the team. He had a little bit of a stretch there after he took his self-imposed vacation where they kind of made him a point to involve him. And it's been a little bit more quiet since then. And you're starting to see the involvement of Watson getting healthier. You're getting 4.5 targets over the last 5 games. So they're making somewhat of a point to involve him. He's just got the biggest playability. I think arguably Jaden Reed has more big playability and more creative ways to get him the ball. That's fine. But we see this 150-yard game, no touchdowns. So, that's really the only thing holding it back there. But that big play potential, I think that it's just way undervalued. And especially for a 25-year-old player with his pedigree, with his athleticism, to be valued at wide receiver 53 just feels wrong to me.
Well, no, when people get the injury thought in their head, and even I'm not susceptible to that because you just forget about him. Like what he hasn't been on the field, and anytime he gets on the field, you kind of expect him to get a touchdown to get all your bread and butter, but it's really just cost versus production at this point. And if you like the Packers offense, you like Jordan Love, then at wide receiver 53 costs, especially in this economy with all these injuries we've had at wide receivers, this is a beggars can't be choosers price for the upside. And like we're saying, he's a top 50 player. A lot of people underrate that fact. Yes, being a first round pick has a higher prestige, and specifically for the contract implications. But being a top 50 player, that normally means that they think that you're a first round pick. A team might reach down and grab them to begin with. So that says a lot about Christian Watson in a situation. Anything before we move on?
Well, I think that when you look at his profile, is kind of, I think people have the wrong belief on him because I think a lot of people view him only as a deep shot type of a player. He does have a little bit more creativity in the ability to run after the catch. The other thing, we've seen some red zone usage out of him. We've seen some targeted red zone attempts and conversions that have gone to him. I think that when you look at their wide receiver group as a whole, he is profile as that go up and get it guy in the red zone that they do have. I think the Packers have been a little bit odd because they're winning their games, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like anything's blowing you away about them. But it's just a big play waiting to happen that the price is right, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. The next one on your list is a surprise. I have no clue what you believe with Jerry Jeudy, but I also don't know anything about the Browns. I tweeted out today that the Browns are a team comprised solely of players that I'm unsure if they're talented or not, with the exception of Miles Garrett and JOK. But specifically that offense, are these guys good? Okay, yeah, Njoku's good, but their receiving core, I don't know, man. There's a lot of numbers that say there's good. There's some tape that says there's good, but there's also a lot of bad. So where are you at with Jerry Jeudy?
Again, I think the price is right on Jerry Jeudy. We've seen him have 11 targets each of the last 2 weeks, double digits targets since the trade from Amari Cooper. He had 1 week, the week after Amari Cooper was gone, that he just had a bad game against the Bengals. Other than that, he's been 2 games above 70 yards, and then 142 this past week was, I think it was the second most highest total in his career. Saw big plays downfield. He has that ability. There's been so much attention on Cedric Tillman that Jerry Jeudy's kind of fallen to the wayside. And I mean, when you look at their pedigree, you look at their history, there's not a real reason to have a big gulf in value between the two of them, especially considering Jerry Jeudy, former first round pick, a player that many people are very, very high on. He's starting to get the opportunity that everybody's kind of waiting for. And this is, sometimes we get a lot of pushback, or people say, well, why don't you tell me buy the guy before he has the big game? One, it's kind of hard to just look at things and assume this random player is going to have a big game when you haven't really seen it. But two, sometimes when you do have that big game, it's easier to realize and to look back and say, this guy's been trending that direction over the last couple of weeks. This is how it's been going over the last 3 weeks. And I like to look at 3 to 4 week, 5 week windows on where we are in production and capture those windows, because I think that's really kind of tells you when a player's running hot, when he can expect that to continue. And then we see it all the time where a player will die off a little bit. But I think right now we're in a major buy window for Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah. And we've kind of talked about this last week at some point. It's also what's your entry point really? What is buying high for Jerry Jeudy? It is not going to be worth more than a second. Really, you're pretty risk averse here for a player that has a lot of upside. So, if you got a lot of extra picks or something, and then you have a need at wide receiver, even as a rebuilder, Jerry Jeudy is an ancient, and more. And another point, they just re-signed him to an extension, did they not? Like a 2-year
He did.
extension?
How
Yeah.
do you, where do you think Jerry Jeudy sits in keep trade cut?
60s.
Yeah, 63. Cedric Tillman's 43. So, I mean, what's the difference
That's
there?
what I was
Like,
going to
a little
ask
bit of
you.
excitement
What
on
do you
Tillman?
where are you at with Tillman? Would you rather have Tillman or would you rather have Jerry Jeudy?
At cost, I would rather have Jeudy, to be honest with you. I mean, if I can trade Cedric Tillman to get Jerry Jeudy plus, I will do that all day. I think that Tillman, I like him enough. I think that, again, I've made the argument before to say, had he not been injured that final year at Tennessee, he could have done everything that Jalen Hyatt did. He could have been the potential Blitnikoff winner working with Hendon Hooker. He could have been a first round pick. I mean, that's certainly within the range of outcomes. We do know Jerry Jeudy was a first round pick. We do know that Cleveland has signed him to an extension, just like you mentioned. And I mean, age wise, I don't think, I want to check really quick on, yeah, Tillman's 24.6 years old and Judy's 25.6 years old. So you're really
Yeah.
kind of dealing in a very similar production window.
Yeah, I don't get the Tillman hype. I do. Let me take that back. I don't get the high price for Tillman. I understand what we've seen in Tillman, how that can be exciting, but we are immediately calling him Nico Collins. And we also need to consider that Nico Collins is kind of an outlier from how he started in his career. Normally, these players don't get this many chances to be what Nico Collins is now. And immediately putting Cedric Tillman in that category is how you get caught in traps in Dynasty or in redraft next year, because I'm sure next year this, or let's say in August, we're going to start seeing his ADP be creep up in best ball, creep up during redraft, and Cedric Tillman seems like a trap player. Now, I'm not saying that you should just sell Cedric Tillman, but a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe should I sell a late first or a high second for Cedric Tillman to go out and get him? I would be apprehensive to do that. And like Jeff said, I'd rather have someone like Jeudy where there's at least money. And I'm not saying you should follow the money, but there is production at this point now where he could be playing himself into more production next year for whatever the Browns are doing.
Yeah, and over the last 4 weeks, we obviously know the attention that Cedric Tillman's garnered. 40 targets, 302 yards over the last 4 weeks for Cedric Tillman. For Jerry Jeudy, 36 targets, 312 yards. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. It's apples to oranges, and one of those apples or oranges gets paid more and has more guaranteed money. So,
the other one is
something to
20
keep in
spots
mind.
ahead of him in value. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's again, guys, we play in micro markets, and this is how it goes, man. You buy and sell, and you try to capitalize as much value as possible. Moving on, we got a twofer here. We have the Tennessee Titans backfield, Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. I know I was big into Tyjae Spears. I had some Tony Pollard shares, but I couldn't get rid of him, and kind of thank God because he's been useful for what I've had. So, uh, both of these guys I know have been, I think, outside the top 30 on Keep Trade Cut. They've hovered around there in price. I know Spears. People like me kind of took him a little bit earlier with the expectation that hopefully he could outplay that, but that's been, I wouldn't say a bad gamble, but it hasn't really paid off. Where are you at with this backfield?
so last week I kind of mentioned that we've seen a little bit of a shift in the Vikings backfield, and that shifted even harder towards away from Aaron Jones being the bell cow, involving Cam Akers. This past week, I think it was about a 63-37 split, which you flash back to week one, it was a 65-35 split there with Ty Chandler as that secondary back. We saw Akers get the touchdown. Something similar has happened in Tennessee. And I think what you're starting to see is maybe some of these veteran running backs that had been all the rage through September and October, we're starting to realize that they're close to 30 years old, or they're in their late 20s. And especially some of these teams like Tennessee that isn't exactly going anywhere, they kind of need to figure out what they've got with Tyjae Spears to a certain extent. And you had Tyjae Spears out hurt for a stretch, and I think that colored maybe the appeal and the usage and the role on Tony Pollard, because Julius Chestnut was the other back there, and you're not going to make a point to get Julius Chestnut involved in your offense if Pollard is running fine. And what I believe happened in that window is we all just agreed that Tony Pollard is the bell cow back, just like we were hoping for last year. Now with Tennessee, Tyjae Spears comes back, and it's, it's closer to 65-35 type split, 60-40 even some. And the last 2 weeks, we've seen Tony Pollard under 10 rush attempts each game, 9 rush attempts each game. And you see a lot more passing game involvement for Tyjae Spears. Again, 23-year-old running back. We know he's incredibly talented when it comes to the passing game. He's running back 39 on Keep Trade Cut right now. And I think right now, when you're looking to make these deals to kind of, if you're a contender, not a contender, looking to sell, everybody wants to hold on to their draft picks in the climate that we're operating in right now. And everybody's going to get the Puka Nacua in the third and fourth round. So sometimes it's a little bit easier to see a guy like Tyjae Spears and say, I believe he's talented. He's 23 years old. The situation's not the best for him right now. Instead of me trying to pry your second round pick away that you're sure is going to be Jaden Reed, maybe I'll just take Tyjae Spears off your hands, or Tyjae Spears, give me a fourth or whatever, and you start to add talented players, and you'll make your roster a little bit deeper, a little bit more talented, and then if it breaks in the right direction, then you've got a real significant piece.
Yeah, and I think you've nailed it. And we kind of see this every year. We've reached the point in the season where these older backs start to look old, and
Yeah.
the season starts to wear out. Where at the beginning of the year, everybody's fresh and everyone looks the best that they've had. Like Josh Jacobs, I feel like that's happening a little bit too. I don't think it, I think Green Bay bringing back Marshawn Lloyd, even with all the things happening, is pretty indicative of where the Packers are at. Because I was like, all right, you had appendicitis. Well, let's rip that dude out and get you on the field as quickly as possible because we have a playoff stretch coming, and then we've got Josh Jacobs and then a guy off the street running the ball right now. So this always happens here, and then I think Tyjae Spears, just anecdotally, he is easily gettable. People are disappointed in him, and you're capitalizing off that disappointment right now. So this is someone that I'm going to get off here, and myself, I'm going to go out and put some trades out, because especially if you were doing zero RB and you've got like Jalen Warren or the other guys around Tyjae Spears ADP, you could go out and get Tyjae Spears right now and then hopefully get some back end success, or you're playing for next year a little bit more, because I think Will Levis or whoever comes in at quarterback next year will make a big difference for the entire offense.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that last point because that's where I wanted to head on this. Of we also have the tendency of saying, "Well, I mean, he's tied to Will Levis, and that's pretty gross. And what's going on there?" I would be very surprised if the Titans are not very aggressive on trying to go get a quarterback or something in that regard. I would be very shocked if it's Will Levis and Mason Rudolph and they just run it back again next year. And you plug a veteran quarterback in there, and especially a guy that is comfortable with the check downs, those types of things. Spears is talented enough in the passing game that you don't need him to be a check down merchant. You can run him on wheel routes. You can work him downfield. You can do all those types of things. And I think the potential is there too to start to explore some two back sets to involve both Pollard and Spears.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And I think some of these guys that aren't talked about are better than Will Levis. I think Jackson Dart is a better quarterback than Will Levis, by quite a bit. And I'm not saying that Jackson Dart is going to be a first rounder, but I think Jackson Dart in the third round would beat out Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, and that's me talking about how low I feel about Levis and what he does for this offense. Because I see Brian Callahan losing it on that sideline every time he's out on the field, man. Like every week, it is comedy. It is comedy, and it'd be even funnier if I wasn't invested in that team in fantasy.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's somebody that I
Go
have
ahead.
I have Tony Pollard in like a redraft league, kind of in a hero running back build. And man, I'm nervous because it's been rough the last couple weeks.
Yep. Next, we're moving to someone else, to J.K. Dobbins, and we've talked about him a little bit. He's kind of had a comeback season. Where are you at with J.K. Dobbins at this point now, Jeff? I think he had an all right game. We've seen a little bit of like Gus Edwards kind of fall forward for some yards and do Gus Edwards things, you know?
Yeah, I was really encouraged because I think 2 weeks ago, and maybe I'll just chalk it up to them playing the Titans and knowing they could just get by with a ground and pound approach against the Titans. But we saw that game where Gus Edwards came back, where he really marginalized J.K. Dobbins, marginalized the passing attack, and really kind of accentuated Gus Edwards. And it was frustrating because we had seen Justin Herbert play so well on a hot streak. But then you see last night's game, and they started the game immediately. The announce team was talking about how the Chargers expect the Bengals to score a lot of points, and they know that they're going to have to open it up. And what did you see? You saw Justin Herbert attacking downfield, and they tried Gus Edwards at first. He took the very first carry of the game for the offense, and then he just kind of got phased out because they know exactly what you're getting with Gus Edwards. J.K. Dobbins is a player that everybody we have heard endlessly sell J.K. Dobbins, and every bit of reply response is, I can't sell him to anybody in my league. At the point now where we're seeing him make a pretty big difference, that if nobody can sell him and everybody's been trying to sell him in your league, go buy J.K. Dobbins and hope you ride it out as a player that can be a top 20 running back. And especially as you're starting to see some of these backfields that we thought were bell cow situations or we thought were really set up for the Aaron Jones and the Tony Pollards. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, it really is set up very, very well for him. The offense, we've seen it be very explosive. We know he's extra ultra motivated. He's talked nonstop about he wants to be the comeback player of the year. That team, I think he's really quickly in short order identified himself as a leader on that team. I mean, it's probably cooled off a little bit, but there was a lot of dynasty buzz about Kamani Vidal is going to take the job from J.K. Dobbins. I think we're done with that, but
Yep.
those sentiments are out there that people just don't want to buy into it. And at some point, if nobody wants to buy into a guy that could be running back 15 or flirt with running back 12 upside in any given week, and I'm trying to win a championship, I'm just going to add that guy to my roster.
Yeah, I was about to say, if no one is buying, you be the buyer. Go throw out a second right now. I really think the Chargers are going to be the running back trap team. I could see like some of these guys that I think are good, but not as good as the top tier. Let's say like Woody Marks, someone I like, or
They're
let's
going to
say
draft
Lamar.
Khalil Mullings, and he's going to be the next
Yeah,
Gus Edwards, and they're going to have J.K. Dobbins as the feature back with Mullings coming in to put his head down into some people, and that's their plan.
yeah. Well, I'm guarantee you, Kellen Mullings, everyone's gonna be like, this is the guy. You know, everyone's gonna overdraft and they're gonna start spending seconds on it, and then guess what? It's the J.K. Dobbins show again next year. Like that. That's what I think is gonna happen. Um, be, like I know everyone's in on these running backs, and in a vacuum they're good, but we've been burned time and time again by landing spot. Some of these guys, they're like, okay, I'll have 4 running backs. That's fine. I'll use them until one dies, and then I'll put in another one. And that's I'm joking, but that's kind of how it is. You know,
Yeah.
These hardballs, they'll take a running back and they'll run them every play. Then all right, you get a breather. You know, Justice Hill go out there, get a little bit of burn. All right, you know, back on the bench, and then Derrick Henry's going to get 1,000 more carries. I mean, that's just what's going to happen next year. I guarantee it. We're going to pencil in your favorite back that you like that isn't one of the top 3 guys. I guarantee you, he's going to disappoint you. So, last one, Jonnu Smith. It's finally here. All the tales, all the legends. He's back. Um, do you think he is the wide receiver 2 on that team at this point?
I don't think he's the wide receiver 2, but I think it's maybe started to happen, but for a long time, all we see is the complaints about Jalen Waddle not being what we expect Jalen Waddle to be, and even Tyreek Hill to some level. We don't really see a lot of talk about why that's happening, and it's happening because Jonnu Smith, he had a slow start in Miami the first month or so. He was not very involved. Since then, over the last 6 weeks, he's been tight end 5 in fantasy. And a lot of that's buoyed by a 101-yard game and 2 touchdowns. But, I mean, it's in play now. A 101-yard game and 2 touchdowns is in play for Jonnu Smith. He's seeing creative usage. He's seeing Mike McDaniel's really kind of, I think, taken to him and understood how to use him and understood the mismatches that he's able to create there. And so instead of just complaining about Jalen Waddle, just go out and buy Jonnu Smith while he's being slept on and get a top 12 tight end, especially in some of these deeper leagues that are tight end premium type leagues. I mean, he could be a flex guy for you weekly, especially the production that we're seeing from him.
I know I've been aggressive on him in Dynasty because, I mean, some of these people are like, well, why would you have Jonnu Smith in your top 20? I'm like, why would you have
because he's
Luke
tight end 5
Musgrave?
and he's like 28 years old. Like, I mean, like he's like
Yeah, like
in
why
race
would you
for
have Luke Musgrave?
yeah.
Yeah, I had people complain that I had like Luke Musgrave higher, and I'm like, I was like Luke Musgrave isn't even the top tight end on his own team, you know. So it's again, this is perception, guys. We get stink on these players, and maybe we should think maybe Jonnu Smith doesn't suck as bad as people think, and maybe this Titans were just like a terrible team, or the Patriots were just a terrible team for a long time. Like, I'm a Pats fan. You know what I think is true? We were just really bad, and we didn't know how to use we didn't know how to use skill players, and Bill O'Brien doesn't know how to talk to grown men. There's just several problems on that team that we kind of punish players like Hunter Henry even, or Jonnu Smith. Like, they were both good tight ends. You just don't have utilization or a quarterback. We saw Jonnu Smith steal opportunities in Atlanta, and we thought that was just a fascination from Arthur Smith. And turns out maybe this dude really does deserve the touches. Our colleague who hosts the other show, he was on the recruiting team for FIU that brought in Jonnu Smith. He's been a freak athlete everywhere he's been at. So I think he's an easy buy, especially in this economy with tight ends.
Well, and we know teams are copycats, and you look at what happened yesterday, what happened this week in week 11. You saw Brock Bowers have a massive game, 13 receptions, 126 receiving yards, most ever by a rookie tight end. He's the type of player that he can be used out of the backfield. You can split him out wide. You can move him through formation. You saw Taysom Hill have a wild, crazy game that basically was the oddest statistical game in history. And we saw 130 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns there. I think teams, we're going to do a tight end episode this week. If this keeps up, if these guys keep up, and we don't have any reason to believe they won't keep up, one of the things you're going to start to look for this offseason is going to be these versatile players that you can create different mismatches for them and use them in different areas. And Jonnu Smith is that type of player. He does have that potential to be. You can give him handoffs. You can work him outside. He's athletic enough to be able to work outside in occasional shifts. And so that's really where I see the league kind of heading on this tight end position, assuming Bowers does what Bowers has been doing, and even Taysom Hill keeps it up.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a fun little spoiler lead in to tomorrow's episode when that drops in there. Cause, you guys just said some mean things about my super flex big board. They're like, there's so many tight ends. And I'm like, that there's there. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just telling you what talent is out there. It's not my fault, that these guys are good, and it's like you said, the versatility is a big deal in the NFL now. You want to, teams are getting smarter and smarter both sides of the ball. So you want to keep them guessing. And Jonnu Smith is easily one of the most versatile players in the NFL. Well, that will end it for this episode. As Jeff said, we're going to be talking about rookie tight ends. We got 4 of them that we're going to cover. And then after that, we're going to have our trade episode on Thursday. As always, guys, if you have trades or anything, like I said, I was going to pull them for the show on Apple, but I try to comment on the ones I don't in the video. So let us know whatever questions you have in the comments. As always, I'm Jagger May. That's Jeff Bell. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one.